Good morning. It's good to see all of you this morning. Yes, good to see some new faces amongst our Sangha. Your presence is deeply welcomed and greatly appreciated. Last week, Shane introduced a practice that we had gotten away from, certainly during COVID. So I would like you all to stand and greet one another in COVID-friendly ways. Okay? If you would remain standing and turn in your practice books to page 7.
Last time they sounded much better when we had it down there. You swiveled it out.
All right then. Always rely on the experts. I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the 3 jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help living beings be freed from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And now, if you'll turn to the next page, page 8, the Heart Sutra, and we say the name at the beginning and the end of the Heart Sutra. Dhamma Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. The Bodhisattva of great compassion from the deep practice of prajna, paramita, perceived the emptiness of all five skandhas, and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna, paramita. Therefore the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna, paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna, paramita, is the great Dharani, the radiant fearless mantra, the utmost supreme mantra, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna paramita. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Thank you, Pastor. You may be seated. Well, good morning again. This is the first
of a 3 Dharma Talk series. You're stuck with me for 3 weeks. This is the first of this type of series we've ever had here at the temple, and it was just circumstantial. We had some people who could not do Dharma Talk in their place in the schedule, and this was way too much information that I wanted to share with you to contain into 1 or even 2 Dharma Talks. So today we are going to be talking about Avasubandhu's 20 and 30 verses on consciousness. Now, the first thing I'd like you to do is picture an endless wheat field. It just goes on forever throughout the cosmos. Think of all of those seeds. Now think of yourself standing right smack dab in the middle of that field that extends throughout the cosmos. And all of those seeds, of which you are one. Today we're going to be talking about store consciousness. And I'm not talking about Myers, okay? I'm talking about storage. Store consciousness. Now, the first 15 of Asabandhu's 50 verses on consciousness carries with it the title, Store Consciousness. I'm going to read all 15, and then I'm going to go back because these are actually divided into triplets. So there are 5 triplets in this section on store consciousness. Mind is a field in which every kind of seed is sown. This mind field can also be called all the seeds. In us are infinite varieties of seeds. Seeds of samsara, nirvana, delusion, enlightenment, seeds of suffering and happiness, seeds of perceptions, names, and words. Seeds that manifest as body and mind, as realms of being, stages of being, and worlds of being, are all stored in our consciousness. This is why it is called store. Some seeds are innate, handed down by our ancestors. Some were sown while we were still in the womb. Others were sown when we were children. Whether transmitted by family, friends, society, or education, all our seeds are, by nature, both individual and collective. The seeds of our life depend on the quality of the seeds that lie deep within our consciousness. The function of store consciousness is to receive and maintain seeds and their habit energies so they can manifest in the world or remain dormant. Manifestations from store consciousness can be perceived directly in the mode of things in themselves as representations or as mere images. All are included in the 18 elements of being. All manifestations bear the marks of both the individual and the collective. The maturation of store consciousness functions in the same way in its participation in all the different stages or realms of being. Unobstructed and indeterminate, store consciousness is continually flowing and changing. At the same time, it is endowed with all 5 universal mental formations. Although impermanent and without a separate self, store consciousness contains, listen to this, all phenomena in the cosmos, both conditioned and unconditioned, in the form of seeds. Seeds can produce seeds. Seeds can produce formations. Formations can produce seeds. Formations can produce formations. Seeds and formations both have the nature of interbeing and interpenetration. The one, I love this part, the one is produced by the all. The all is dependent on the one. Store consciousness is neither the same nor different, individual nor collective. Same and different, this is a special word here, same and different, inter-are. That's INTER-ARE. Inter-are. Same and different are inter-are. Collective and individual give rise to each other. When delusion is overcome, understanding is here. And store consciousness is no longer subject to affliction. Store consciousness becomes great mirror wisdom, reflecting the cosmos in all direction. Its name is now pure consciousness or enlightenment. Wow, I love that. That is so cool. That is so cool. Now, I've done this before, but I'm going to do it again. Everybody look at their hand. Now think for a moment, look deeply into your hand and ask yourself this question. When was my hand born? When was my hand born? Some would say it was born at the point of my birth, of course, duh. Some would say it was born in the embryo, in the womb, excuse me. Some would say it was born in the embryo. But if you look deeply into the origin of your hand, you know what you can see? Your mother, your father, your siblings, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, all of our ancestors throughout space and time and realms, all exist right here. It's the same with the seeds. Every seed that you have in your consciousness has existed in the collective. Every one of your ancestors, everyone in the cosmos, everyone throughout time, space, and all realms. Now, here's another question for you. Have you ever met a person who woke up one morning, had been living a completely normal life, and woke up one morning and just on the spur of the moment decided, you know what? I think I'm going to start robbing banks for a living. Yeah, that's the ticket. That sounds like a good plan. Have you? No. Where do bank robbers typically come from? Seeds that were planted long, long time ago. Or maybe that's the family business. And that's what they learned. Have you ever met anyone who just woke up in the morning and said, you know what? I think I'm going to spend the rest of my life being a racist. Yeah, that sounds good. All this damn white privilege. No, nobody wakes up one morning and says, I'm going to be a racist. Yeah. It comes from a seed. Now, the problem with so many seeds is that they operate on a less than conscious level. Now, Sigmund Freud, I spent my entire career in the field of psychotherapy. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung followed as closely to the Buddhist concepts of consciousness as anybody. And in their writings, Thich Nhat Hanh actually, he's the one who translated these 50 verses on consciousness. And he has given many, many, many lectures to psychotherapists and clinicians all over the world on this. And they come back to him and they say, you cannot believe how enlightening this has been for me. I spent my entire career in this field and learned more in these 3 hours than I did in my entire education. Freud's ideas of the id, the little uncontrollable, out of control child within all of us. The ego, the part that's trying to be the arbiter between the id and the superego, which is, you know what, I'm the only thing in the universe. What else matters? And it's not the conscious seeds that get us into trouble because we can make decisions about those. It's the unconscious one. Now, I said these were divided into triplets. Let's go back and look at them. The first triplet. Mind is a field in which every kind of seed is sown. This mind field can also be called all the seeds. In us are seeds. In us are infinite varieties of seeds. Seeds of samsara, nirvana, delusion, and enlightenment. Seeds of suffering, happiness, seeds of perception, names, and words. Okay, now what is talking about when it says, well, I'll just go on with the next one. Seeds that manifest as body and mind are realms of beings, stages, and worlds are all stored in our consciousness. That is why it is called store. Now, we've been storing these seeds throughout beginningless and endless space and time and throughout all realms. Some we brought with us from realms ago that we don't even know about. Please notice when it says all the seeds, it describes that. Samsara, which is suffering. Nirvana, which is enlightenment. Suffering itself. What's the first noble truth? Life is suffering. What is that created by? Typically the three poisons: our ignorance, our greed, and our anger. All right. So we store them all. As if that's not bad enough for the negative seeds, we pass them on. To our children, our children's children, our children's children's children, unless someone stops the cycle. The second triplet: some seeds are innate, handed down by our ancestors. Some were sown while we were still in the womb, others were sown when we were children. Whether transmitted by family, friends, society, or education, all our seeds are by nature both individual and collective. I want you to think about some teacher you had in school. Actually, I'd like to think about two of them. One, in your education, the best teacher you ever had. Think about that person. Then I want you to think about the worst teacher you ever had. Think about that person. Now, they aren't best or worst, they're just different from our perceptions. But ask yourself this question: what did I learn that I have carried with me all through my life, all through my 70 years, okay? My worst teacher was Mr. Green. Now, Mr. Green was my 9th grade teacher. All right? He used to have a paddle. It was about 3 feet long, shaped like a wicket. What's that game? Cricket. A cricket paddle with holes drilled in it so he could get better velocity. And he caught my 9th grade girlfriend and I passing notes in school. After school, he said, "Mr. Beagley, I'd like you to see you up here for a moment." I knew what that meant. He said, "Assume the position." He had his paddle in his hand. That meant put your elbows on the desk in front of you and bend over. And depending how serious the infraction, depended on how many whacks you were going to get, okay? My best teacher, Ted Bellis. I had him for 10th grade journalism. I was on the school paper, 11th grade English, senior English. He used to invite students over to his home on Lake Michigan for a Saturday afternoon, and we would just walk along the beach talking about literature. He's the one who inspired me to begin I actually am a dual major. Literature is one of my majors. He inspired me to that. He was a linguistic and artist, a literature artist in the way that he could discuss. He was also a flaming alcoholic, okay? And I never started drinking until we were on those walks on the beach. And those seeds led to my being an alcoholic and ending up in recovery and destroying 2 marriages and 2 families. Do you see how seeds can be a mixed bag? He was such an enlightened man, and he sowed seeds of addiction. Now, I can't blame him alone, because 3 of my uncles are addicts. My grandmother, oh my gosh, my mom's mom, she was a flaming addict who would send my dad down to the drugstore on a Saturday evening because she was out of her cocaine. Okay, because that was, I mean, a thing back then. But you didn't need a prescription, you know. I mean, the pharmacist knew her, he knew the family. One of my grandfathers was an addict. I don't know about any of my greats, but you know, I've always said, as a therapist, I said, you show me a consistent trait in any generation, and I could trace it back at least 3 generations. It's taken longer than I thought. Here's the function of the store consciousness. The function of store consciousness is to receive and maintain seeds and their habit energies, like addiction, or like well-being, or like an attitude of gratitude. Those are all seeds. So they can manifest in the world or remain dormant. You see, when we have a recognition that these seeds exist within us, then we're in control. If we don't have a recognition of the seeds that are in us, then we're talking id and superego stuff. Okay? Manifestations from store consciousness can be perceived directly in the mode of things in themselves, what we exist, what we perceive in the moment, in this very moment, as representations or mere images. All are included in the 18 elements of being. Now, let me give you a little explanation of that. You all know what a house looks like. You all have a perception of a house. Okay? But how many different houses do you think there are? How many different kinds of houses? Man. See, that's the reality. And we don't even know about all of those. What do we know about? Well, our own house or apartment, whatever we have, our own dwelling place. Those in our neighborhood, those we can see from the street. But what do we know about those? Do we know what they look like inside? No, they are mere representations. I know what a table is, but I don't know what all the tables are. You understand what I'm saying? Representations or mere images. All manifestations bear the marks of both the individual and the collective. The maturation of store consciousness functions in the same way in its participation in the different stages and realms of being. So, at a different time, when I was a kid, we had a little house in Muskegon on Henry Street, where Scribbs Pizza is right now, when it was a dirt road. Okay? Now, those of you who know Muskegon know it hasn't been a dirt road in like forever. Okay? We had a kitchen table in that little house. Now, that kitchen table now resides in our summer home, our summer cottage. And it's the same table when I was a kid. It's got the same little hole in the formica where my dad drilled too hard through a piece of wood. Okay, I wasn't careful enough. Just got that little pit in the formica. It's right there. Every time I look at that, it brings back things. That is my image of a table. It's a representation of a table. It is not all tables. It is my seed. All right. The fourth triplet. Unobstructed and indeterminate store consciousness is continually flowing and changing, which means, hey, it's always moving around in there. Always moving around. And if you're not conscious of the unhealthy seeds within you, they'll come out to play. At the same time, it is endowed with all 5 universal mental formations. Well, what that means is that all of these seeds are present, they are impermanent, but they are also ever abiding. They're always there. But we can control the flow. Although impermanent and without a separate self, store consciousness contains all phenomena in the universe. There is nothing in the cosmos that is not already here. It's like when you first entered Buddhism and you were told, don't look anywhere else. You don't have to go looking for Buddhism. You already have innate Buddha nature. What? Are you kidding me? How does that work? It's there. You need to bring it up and experience it. All right. Although impermanent, without a separate self, store consciousness contains all phenomena in the cosmos, both conditioned and unconditioned. Now, conditioned is what we learned how to do. Okay? I was a fencer. I fenced foil and epee in college, and then I was on the Army team. And after I got out of the Army and worked a lot, I sort of set it aside. I came home from work one day, and there was my 6-year-old and my 9-year-old. I heard this awful clatter in the basement. And I went down there, and there they were. They had discovered my old fencing bag. And they were going at it with no protection whatsoever. Whack, 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 whack. Okay. I would have had a heart attack on the spot. But I said, if you want to learn, in other words, if you want to be conditioned, I will find you coaches. And I did. I found marvelous 2 Russian brothers that run the Grand Rapids Fencing Academy, Mikhail and Arkady Sarkisov. Okay. We went to fencing. We traveled from Spring Lake to Grand Rapids 5 nights a week. We had tournaments on the weekends. My kids got very, very good very quickly. And so they ended up qualifying for national tournaments. And so we had to travel all over the place. Okay. It's like being a soccer dad or soccer mom. Okay. Except I'm going to Atlanta, to San Francisco, to LA. Anyway, they were all over the place. And then, now this is about conditioning. We were at a national, and my coaches said, well, David, you fenced all these years. Why don't you just come back, since you have to bring the kids anyway, and fence as a senior? I thought, that is the most brilliant, stupid idea I've ever heard. So I did. And on one occasion, in the finals, in B fencers are rated, A is Olympic fencers. In B fencers, I was paired up in the finals with my daughter, who is 40 years younger than I am. She just turned 30, okay, last week. And we were putting our equipment on, and I said, baby, I'm not going to show you any mercy. And she said, neither am I, Papa. So, in the finals, it goes to 15. You have to win by 2. So I had her 15-14. She tied it 15-15. She had me 16-15. I tied it at 16. I had her 17-16. She tied it at 17. She beat me at 18. Now, fencing's a very formal sport. When you're done with a match, you take off your mask, you take off your glove, you unhook your weapon, you put it down, you walk to the center of the court, and you shake your opponent's hand and congratulate them, okay? Oh, no, not her. She threw her helmet on the floor, threw her weapon on the floor, threw her glove on the floor, ran across the strip, jumped into my arms, and gave me a great big hug and whispered in my ear, "Papa, I just kicked your ass." I said, "I know, and I'm so proud of you." My whole point is that could not have happened without conditioning. You see, I had to learn how to fence. I had very good coaches. I found very good coaches for them. They had to learn how to fence rather than try to kill each other in the basement. It's all about conditioning. Which seeds get conditioned? Which seeds get watered? And which seeds don't, so that they don't grow, so that they lie dormant, because we need them to for our health and well-being and for the benefit of all sentient beings. Seeds and formations both have the nature of interbeing and interpenetration. They are within us, they penetrate us, we send them out, and they penetrate others. The one is produced by the all. The all is dependent on the one. Store consciousness is neither the same nor different, individual nor collective. Same and different are. Collective and individual give rise to each other. When delusion is overcome, when we leave those delusional seeds dormant, we don't water them, understanding is there. And store consciousness is no longer subject to afflictions. Now, store consciousness becomes what we call great mirror wisdom, reflecting the cosmos in all directions. Its name is now pure consciousness. Now, the only analogy I could come up with, a Buddhist analogy, is the analogy of Indra's net. Some of you might be familiar with Indra's net. Lord Indra cast a net over the entire cosmos. At the intersection of the net, each intersection of the entire net was a jewel, a multifaceted jewel. And within that jewel, every other jewel in the net was reflected. That is mirror consciousness. So, we are not going to have meditation today. Instead, we are going to have a short question and answer period for this first of 3 series on the nature of consciousness. Anybody have any thoughts or questions? David.
It occurred to me that mind field and mind field are close together.
Oh, yes, they are.
And if you don't cultivate the one carefully, you may blow up in the other one.
Absolutely. Mind field. In fact, when I read it for the very first time, that's how I read it. Do we have a additional mic? Nobody is back there. Will someone please move it? Yes. I read it actually, mind field, and I thought, wait a minute, that can't be right. Mind field, but they are very close. You see, watering unhealthy seeds is like stepping on a mine. It's going to blow your well-being all apart. Any other thoughts, questions?
It's more like right grass. It's okay. Can't hear it.
No, it's already happened.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The question is more of like an understanding of what you just said. It's like for me, I'm trying to, of course, cultivate the correct things, but in my mind, I'm always finding like I don't want to be confined to a concept of, like not taking care of it because I'm conforming to it. I'm conforming to not watering the seeds that I don't need, and I'm conforming to watering the seeds I need to. So what's the best way to describe back to me so I can get out of my head?
Thank you for that, Anna. As a therapist, when people would come in and had engaged in some kind of unacceptable behavior, the question was never, why do you do that? Because I knew the answer to that. I knew the answer I was going to get. I don't know. Instead, I would say that behavior serves some very important function in your life. It might not be healthy, but it is functional. What function does it serve? So when we bump up against those unhealthy seeds, we have to ask ourselves, what function does this serve in my life? Okay? Because once we understand the function, then we can make a different decision when that tendency arises. See, another term for seeds would be tendencies. Every tendency that ever existed anywhere in the cosmos dwells within us already. So when a tendency arises, a very important question for us to ask would be, what function does that tendency play in my life? And it's in that understanding, Adam, that we can correct course to a different seed that we want to water that will result in a different healthy behavior. Could you state your name, sir?
Sure, Larry Pinacic.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that this has described how we have choices and that we can make choices about which seeds, which tendencies to foster. And further, you're hinting at a mechanism for determining which choices are better in the sense of healthier or whatever. Certainly, there's no absolute best ever. We know that. But what we haven't seen yet, and maybe it's coming up, so this is really more of an observation, is the tools for motivating oneself to do what one knows is right rather than what might be easy or quickly gratifying but long-term unhealthy.
Thank you. I have to go back to psychotherapy for an answer to this one. There is a term in psychotherapy called homeostasis. Homeostasis is a bandwidth within which families operate, within which we all operate. Okay? Below that bandwidth is a set of behaviors. Above that bandwidth is a set of behaviors. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say you grew up in a family, I'll go back to my previous example of bank robbers. It was a family business. Okay? And you didn't think that was morally right. That you thought there's something wrong with this picture. Okay? Stealing is not a good thing. Now, what would the family system do with that? If you announced, I'm going to the police academy, they would have to do one of two things. Convince you, no, that's not a good idea, stay within the spectrum, stay within the homeostasis, or they would have to eject you. One of the two. Those are the only two options. Okay, now we also have to recognize when we're being held in an unhealthy bandwidth. You know, hearing stories from abused clients for years. Why would a wife who is being abused, you know, and when she told me about it, I was obligated to contact the authorities. When the authorities came to her home, she would defend the abusing husband. Why? Because this woman had learned she needed to be abused. It was a conditioned behavior. In most situations, she grew up with abuse. It was what she was familiar with. Most of us gravitate toward that with which we are familiar, even if it's not healthy. I'll take one more. Young Soo.
So, when you talked about tendencies, our Buddhist-based recovery program, we do a 4-step, we do an inventory, and we look for our tendencies. In AA, it would be called character defects, but we look for tendencies. And what's interesting, when you were talking, I have a person, and one of their tendencies is to help people, to please people, to the extent that it affects their family life, and it's unhealthy to the extent that person takes it. But it is healthy when they get it back into the healthy realm. So this tendency taken too far, which if you're an addict, 1 is good and 10 is much better, you dial it back down so that tendency can be healthy or unhealthy.
Is that a thought or a question?
Both. What do you...
I've been in your recovery groups, Mark. Again, it's the recognition. Just that recognition. Now, we don't recognize it until there's a trigger. Okay? There's always a trigger. All right? Your gun's not going to shoot unless you pull the trigger. There's always a trigger that raises one of these seeds up within us. It's at that point we have a decision to make. I know what this does for me, the function. Is it healthy? You know, it's like we say in Buddhism. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it for the benefit of all sentient beings? If any of those questions is answered no, you just don't do it. All right, that's all the time we have for today. I look forward to seeing you and all of you out there in internet land.
Announcements?
Yes, any announcements? Thank you. Thank you, Kaji-su. Any announcements? Yes.
I'm Brian. As a few of you know, maybe most, maybe all, we are planning for another silent auction. It'll be December 4th, right in between the holidays, to get your fill in November and then think about presents in December. And maybe also think about if you know anyone who is an artisan who may be able to donate some items for the auction. We just did get some information, paper, pamphlets, things. Right now there is a set on the front, what do you call it? The desk thing under the bulletin
The
board?
desk thing.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, right there.
Okay,
It's the desk thing.
right. Okay, so, and then after service, there'll be a set over here on this desk thing. There is 2 pages of kind of like a FAQ, kind of an idea of what you things to donate, things not to donate, an idea, and then the other one is, there's a whole stack of them. Take one if you want, or two, or three, or whatever. And that's it. Gail, do you have anything?
Thank you.
I don't.
Yeah.
Did a good job.
Okay, and Gail is our contact person. If you have any questions, see myself, Jacob, or Gail, or Kunga. We're all on the fundraising committee. Once we get closer to November, we'll probably be looking for more volunteers. So if you're willing and able, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I've been asked to do a dinner for 8.
I have more just a question.
Yes.
Is the LGBTQ group still meeting or no?
Alize, who was leading the group, has moved away. That we are in discussions right now for a new group leader. Okay, and yes, it will be returning. Okay, so please understand that. Just be patient with us for a little bit. COVID really threw us for a loop, so a lot of things disappeared, some appeared, Zoom and YouTube appeared. So a lot of good things came out of it and some things that set us back a little bit, but it will happen. Okay.
I just know somebody who signed up with them, so I was
Yes.
going to share that information.
Yes. Well, it's not put together yet, but it's in the works. Please be patient.
May,
Yes.
may I
Proceed.
encourage, if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, to go to the web and do that. That's zengr.org.
Yes.
There's also a calendar of events on the web, as well as a link to that calendar in the newsletter. We are also posting monthly events on the doors, so watch for that as well if you don't have internet access. They are also on the bulletin boards in the front as well as downstairs.
All right. Thank you very much. And we will stand and we will have our closing gathas. I don't need you for this one. For all unskillful actions ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passion, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week.